Hey, just a friendly pointer today. There was a little background noise today that I couldn't avoid, so you're better off listening with speakers than headphones because you can't really hear it with speakers, but it's totally up to you. Just thought I'd try to help. Enjoy the video. Alright, ladies and gents, welcome to the video back on Battlefield 5, and I'm going to open by showing you two quick clips of my girlfriend being shot at by the same weapon, which is a very strange way to start a video, but trust me, you'll understand afterwards. Now, it may not be instantly noticeable, but there are three major differences between the two clips that you need to know about if you don't already. Some of you may do because this gun came out a little while ago, but a lot of you probably won't be, so that's where I come in today to help you. I am GetGoodGuy, and this information I'm going to share with you today could hold value for your own play and playing against someone using this strategy. So the M3 Grease Gun, an SMG that was recently released for Battlefield 5, it has a specialisation slot that allows you to put on a suppressor if you so choose. And the description for it just reads that it reduces the noise from firing the weapon. Now I thought, well, that doesn't really tell me very much, and DICE sometimes put things in the game, don't really explain them, and we don't know if they actually do very much, or if it's a bit of a gimmick or whatever. So I looked into it. The two clips you saw were me first firing at my girlfriend without the suppressor, and then secondly firing at her with the suppressor. The first noticeable thing was that without the suppressor, the noise of firing the weapon is a bit more noticeable in terms of the actual sound that it makes. It stands out more. And my girlfriend said that it was a little less clear, the sound, when being fired at with the suppressor. So that's a good start, but it's not very scientific. So what I then did was compare the two in my editing software. And it turns out that generally, standing from the same spot, firing at the same spot, the suppressor noise falls between 0.5 and 1 decibel quieter than the unsuppressed version of the gun. Which isn't a huge amount, but can make a difference, especially with a lot of noise going on when you're playing Battlefield. You're in these massive firefights, these battles, these explosions. It may make a difference, but that's not all. That's just what you'd expect the suppressor to do. There's more, and I think actually more valuable stuff. So if we compare these two images, on the left without the suppressor and on the right with the suppressor, you'll notice that there is no tracer round for firing with the suppressor on. There is no visual cue that the gun has been fired, and thus when someone is using the suppressor, you can't use the tracer rounds to work out where those shots are coming from. If they shoot across your screen or something, there's nothing visually there for you to pick up on, so you can't pinpoint their location as easily. And then, perhaps most importantly, on top of that, if we compare the two again, there is no hit indicator direction for actually being struck by the gun when you're using a suppressor. On the left, you'll notice the little red mark. On the right, there isn't one. You get no help finding out where you're being shot from. So yeah, using the suppressor does genuinely make a big difference. It is the stealthy way to go, and there is a threefold benefit for doing so. I'll show you here from behind as well. Being shot in the back, a hit indicator without the suppressor, and then being shot in the back, no hit indicator with the suppressor. This can make a very big difference, especially if you're using the suppressor and you're shooting from range or you're missing some shots or whatever. You get that bit more leeway of the enemy not knowing where you're shooting them from. Now, using the suppressor on the grease gun does mean you can't then use recoil buffer, which is on the other side of the skill tree, which reduces upwards recoil, which is a bit of a downer for some people. But the M3 Grease Gun is, in my opinion, super easy to use currently anyway. You don't really need recoil buffer. It feels like it just shoots pretty much straight with just a tiny amount of recoil control. And I think the suppressor is just more beneficial. Now, whether that will be significantly different after the upcoming weapon rebalancing remains to be seen. Perhaps the gun will recoil a lot more at that point, and recoil buffer might be a bit more necessary at that point. We'll have to wait and see. But for now, and if you choose to continue using the suppressor after the changes, what are the benefits in actual play? Well, all of the multiplayer footage today is of me using the suppressor on the grease gun, and I found that it's great for flanking and using unseen angles, coming from places the enemy don't expect you, and running through multiple people without them really knowing where you're coming from, or perhaps even knowing there's anyone there at all. There's less fear of giving your position away, so you can shoot a bit more freely. You know those situations where you're not sure if you should fire yet or not? You still have to consider it, but not quite as much. There aren't as many indicators that you're present. And think about the fact that the visibility of this game, where people blend in quite a lot in the environment, well, this causes a lot of people to basically rely on audio and visual cues from weapon firing, and using the suppressor reduces or eradicates 3 of those cues. So you can be a bit of a ninja really. Then if you want to combine this with a lack of footsteps in the game, because let's be realistic, you can move around in this game fairly easily a lot of the time without people hearing you, and you really can go for some kind of aggressive stealth mix. Walking / running around, firing here and there, there, not being seen, not being heard as easily. It's genuinely good and genuinely fun. I highly recommend you try it out if you haven't already. But there's more. Let's talk about the rest of the basics of using the grease gun, what it's good at, what it's bad at, all that kind of stuff. So it is a slow firing SMG, firing at 450 rounds per minute, but it is still great in close quarters combat if you hit your shots against a lot of other weapons. It will still outstrip a lot of weapons that aren't designed for close quarters, but of course you are at a disadvantage against a lot of the faster firing SMGs, shotguns, all that kind of stuff, so do keep it in mind. You can't just Rambo everyone. That's where the stealth aspect comes into play a little bit more. Perhaps the main draw of using this gun is that it's capable of hitting consistently at mid to long range. It's definitely an SMG that you use if you don't want to have to worry about your circumstance too much and still be able to hit the target. It's very stable. It will take a lot of bullets to kill at long range, but you can still hit the target. And mid-range is pretty much just easy mode as far as using an SMG goes. Although remember that everything is subject to change in future weaponry balances and TTK changes. We know that DICE love doing those, so we'll just have to see how it all pans out in that scenario. But as of right now, it's very, very good at what I've listed, and it's reasonable to believe that it will retain a lot of these strengths moving forwards, because that's what differentiates the gun from other options. Now you get 30 rounds per mag, which is pretty easily 2 or 3 kills on a flank before reloading on average. If you're very accurate, you can get more. If you spray and pray, you'll get less, but yeah, 2 or 3 kills seems pretty reasonable, as long as you're hitting a decent amount of your shots. And in terms of a 1v1, it's very, very forgiving having 30 rounds, firing at 450 rounds per minute. You get an extended amount of time in order to try to kill your target. Add to this that the stability of the weapon allows you to go for the head if you so wish, to make yourself a bit more efficient, to give you that bit more range potency, and to cut down that kill time in close quarters if you're able to ping a headshot. Although sometimes just aiming for the body in close quarters is the way to go, and just hope that your kill time is better than the enemies and that you're a better shot / have better reactions. Now the suppressor itself very much plays into my tactic I've talked about many times before of using playing norms against the enemy, taking different routes to them, looking into the hot zones without actually crossing into them, catching the enemy unaware, and providing scenarios that the enemy just isn't used to dealing with. I'm very, very impressed with the M3 grease gun. I'm more impressed with the suppressor that's on it. I commend DICE for putting something in the game that is quite unique and actually has a purpose, even though they don't really explain it. And not being able to tell where you're being shot from, or on the flip side, being able to shoot the enemy and have them not know where you're doing it from, can be a really, really big deal. I've been very surprised by how successful I've been with this thing, and it's genuinely my new favorite medic weapon. I would take this over the Type 2A every single time. I don't mean it's going to be better than the Type 2A for everybody, but for me, and for some of you out there, this gun is better. More versatile, more stealthy, and honestly just more fun. And you don't have to join the hordes of people all using the Type 2A at the minute. Although watch this space, moving forwards with the TTK / weaponry balancing, I expect the Type 2A to take quite a hit. And if DICE have any sense, they'll be nerfing it quite a lot. I don't want to see things nerfed into the ground, but definitely a reduction to its potency would be a reasonable idea considering its magazine size. And so that's what I have to say about the suppressor and the M3 grease gun. I think it's fantastic, and remember to let me know what you think of it in the comments below, and whether you already knew about it, whether you've already seen people talk about it elsewhere, etc., any other tips you have for it, anything relevant to today's video, or indeed just anything you want to tell me. Now if you like the video, hitting the like button is massive for me, I really appreciate it. Subscribe if you're new here, and all of my links to my social media, including Patreon, can be found in the description and my pinned comment. Here is the Board of Awesome for the epic people who support the channel on Patreon. They're all absolute heroes and love them all deeply, and of course, often. If you want to join them on the Board of Awesome, the link to the Patreon page is in the description and my pinned comment. And with that all said, I am GetGoodGuy, and I'll see you next time. Laters. Yeah, so I'm totally going to just fill the next minute with footage because YouTube don't really pay you anything if your video isn't 10 minutes long. So, yeah, there we go. Honesty. All right, let's do this. which will make semi-autos potentially a bit too powerful. But yeah, usually 3 or 4 bullets to kill. You can pace your shots, you don't have to deal with the wild recoil of using a full auto weapon, even though generally weapons have never been very hard to handle in this game anyway. But still, it's an advantage, and 2-shot headshots with certain semi-autos as well is a big deal.